If you're going on a cruise this summer or even after, there are some things that you need to do and be aware of before your cruise to be completely prepared. And honestly, a lot of the videos that are out there are at least partially outdated and lack a lot of the important information that you absolutely need to know. So in this video, I'm going to be going through 10 things, 10 steps, if you will, that you'll want to be aware of before you cruise and plan for. And I'm also going to include some extra tips that will be helpful. If you're new to my channel, my name is Ilana. Welcome or welcome back. Let's get started. Firstly, know your cruise line's vaccination policy. So for the cruises that are sailing in the Caribbean this summer, the majority of them are actually asking for vaccines for at least most of their cruise passengers. So for example, Norwegian Cruise Line and Viking, they are asking everybody on the ship without exception to be vaccinated versus Celebrity and Royal Caribbean that are asking everybody that is over 18 to be vaccinated. Now, something to mention is that not all cruise lines have actually announced their vaccination policies. Now, that may have changed by the time that you do watch this video or by the time that cruises are sailing out of the US. But definitely it is something that you'll need to know, well, before you cruise. Now, something I did want to mention is you don't actually have to be fully vaccinated to actually book a cruise in the Caribbean this summer, even if the cruise line requires a vaccine. But you do actually need to be fully vaccinated by the time that you sail. So what this means in most cases is having the vaccine, the full vaccine, at least 14 days before the cruise. Now, when you book, you won't actually have to show proof, but you will have to show proof before you sail and likely when you do fill in that health questionnaire. Now, if you're sailing from outside of the US, for instance, in one of the Caribbean islands, and you're used to sailing from closer to home, well, be prepared for things to be a little bit more different and a little bit more complicated. So for instance, if you are used to not having a passport to be able to cruise, especially if it was a closed loop cruise, you will have to have a passport for your sailings from these Caribbean islands. At the same time, you may have to get health travel visas and other travel documentation. In some cases, there are specific insurances that you need to get. So you will have to navigate this, and this is different depending on the island or country that you will be sailing from. Now, I do have a tip for this, and this is to consider using a travel agent for these cruises. The benefit of this is they are actually dealing with so many people, so many cruisers that are booking this, and they know all of the ins and outs, and there's a lot of new information that is actually to come. A lot of the cruise lines have said that some of the information will only be available 30 days before your cruise, the updated policies. So they're going to have all of that information, and because they're dealing with so many clients, they're going to have it at the top of their head, and you won't have to search for it. So they'll be able to tell you the things that you need to know, and probably the things that you don't even know that you need to know. So obviously completely your choice, but this is one time that I do think using a travel agent will really be helpful. Now let's get to the planning. So the next up is actually booking your air once you've already booked your cruise. Now, one thing that I would recommend is taking a look at Cruiseline Air. Most of the time, Cruiseline Air is actually very competitively priced, and it does offer the advantage that the cruise line, well, when you book Cruiseline Air, will actually help you if there's a problem with the flight, if the flight is canceled, if there's any delay. They will help you to get on another flight if need be, and they'll even fly you out to the next port if you do miss that flight. Now, it doesn't mean that it is a replacement for flying in the day before and getting a hotel. You definitely still want to do this because you don't want to ruin your trip, but this is definitely something that can be helpful for your cruise. And number 4, book a hotel the night before your cruise. You will not regret having a little bit of time to unwind, especially I think when we do start cruising again. We're going to be a little bit stressed with some of the new travel restrictions, some of the requirements that we have, the testing that we'll need to do before the cruise, all of those things. So book that hotel at least one night before your cruise, and definitely book it as soon as possible. You could book it with a cruise line if you like, or you can book that separately on your own with any of the major booking sites. Now, as soon as possible, do book your cruise line excursions. Now, in the past, I would have said research your ports and consider private excursions. And I still think private excursions are great and even exploring on your own. But when we do start cruising again, it looks like we are going to have to book our excursions through the cruise line if we do want to be able to get off the ship. And because, well, everybody is going to be in the same boat, yes, pun intended, well, everybody is going to want to book up those most popular excursions. So if there's something you want to do, book it right away. Now, something to keep in mind is in most cases, do check the fine print, but in most cases, that excursion is actually still refundable up until 48 hours, either before the actual excursion date, or sometimes it's before your cruise. So do check on that, but you really have nothing to lose. So book that excursion. The only, negative is that you might have to pay for it. And if you are waiting for a refund, well, you have to wait for the refund. But I still think that the benefits outweigh the negative. Let me know, please, what you think. And at the same time, if you are liking this video so far, please do give it a thumbs up. I very much appreciate it. Now, if this is applicable to your situation, depending on when you are booking your cruise, do take a look at the cruise lines. Well, the new all-inclusive options that some of the cruise lines have. So this includes Celebrity, which has the always included. Of course, if you're booking a cruise right now on a new Celebrity sailing, it will already have the always included pricing. But if you have a cruise that you booked in the past and it's perhaps for in a few months from now, well, you may have booked this before the always included. So you'll want to kind of compare the pricing and see if it's maybe better for you to switch over to the always included. And the same thing goes for Princess, that now has Princess Plus, and for Holland America, that it has an all-inclusive option as well. Do check to see if you can upgrade to those extra perks packages. And in some cases, they really are worth it. Now, even though cruise prices haven't exactly been low lately, you still want to monitor those cruise prices to see if there are any drops at any point between now and when you are actually sailing on your cruise, but especially between the time that you book and between final payment. If the cruise price goes lower, most of the time the cruise line will honor that lower price and actually give you that reduction, or you can upgrade to a better cabin, which might even be the best option of all. So definitely always keep an eye on this. I would even keep an eye after the final payment, because sometimes if there is a larger reduction, it could be worth inquiring to see if you can even upgrade after that. Now, this next tip is a little bit personal. Follow the cruise news. The fact is that there are going to be so many changes over the next few months, maybe over the next year, because we really are in flux, not only with the cruise industry, but with the whole health situation, with travel restrictions. So you definitely want to kind of keep up to date with the cruise news. But I would caution you, take everything with a grain of salt, because the reality is cruise YouTubers, and that includes me, travel agents, there are a lot of people that just don't know everything, and the only people that know it all really are the cruise lines themselves. And up until they announce something directly, like hearing it from the horse's mouth, so to speak, we just don't know 100% if it is true. And that's the case even if we look at all of those Caribbean sailings that just happened. We all could not have predicted that that was going to happen in exactly the way it did. So definitely follow the cruise news, but at the same time, relax a little bit and wait till you hear it directly from the cruise line. Now, as it gets closer to sailing, make sure that you're aware of all of the protocols that the cruise line has, or all of the health or the travel restrictions, all the different things that you need to be aware of, especially for boarding day. So that includes knowing about the testing requirements. That includes as well knowing about what time to arrive on boarding day. In the past, I would have said arrive as early as possible, but don't do that now. You definitely have to arrive at your embarkation daytime. And again, something that I mentioned earlier on in this video is you might want to consider booking with a travel agent that really is aware of all of these protocols, that is booking a lot of people, so that he or she can help you to navigate through all of this. Another pun, that was good. All right, let's move on. Now, I have one last tip that I was saving because it really is not one that I hear very often, and I think it could be especially helpful, but I will give you a reminder that if you are liking this video, please do give it a thumbs up, and also please consider subscribing if you haven't subscribed already. So here is the last tip, and that is if you have bought shares of any of the cruise lines. Now, a lot of the time, the shareholder benefit or the shareholder onboard credit will be about $100 or more per cabin. And what you'll want to do is you'll want to go to the cruise line website if you do own these shares, and you'll want to download and print the form as well. You'll want to get your brokerage statement showing that you own those shares, and you'll want to send that in directly to the cruise line, or you can ask your travel agent to do that and help you with that otherwise. But you want to send that in at least 14 days before your cruise so that you do get that additional onboard credit. I know so many people did buy cruise stocks over this last year, so I thought that that might be a handy tip if it's the first time that you're doing this. Now, I hope that these tips were helpful helpful. I'd love to know, when is your next cruise? Are you planning to cruise this summer? Are you planning to cruise in the next few months? Please let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching and happy cruising.